All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about OpenAI in manufacturing. If you watch any of our previous videos, then you might have seen us talk about OpenAI in industry before. If you haven't and it's your first time, then just a quick reminder, we're just going to talk about some of the use cases for the manufacturing industry. We will give you a quick reminder of what Microsoft and OpenAI's partnership is, but we won't go too much into that detail. If you want to learn a lot about that, click on the video underneath in the description where one of our peers has gone in depth into that product and service. So reminder, my name is Sarah Van Hambren, one of the architects here at Microsoft, and with me today is my peer, Christian. Christian, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sana. This is I'm Christian Talmani. For those who don't know me, I lead our manufacturing technical industry, all things technology, cloud architecture around the manufacturing cloud, as well as a little bit on the manufacturing strategy. And I have the pleasure of co-leading a new council called the AI Innovation Council, where we drive things like OpenAI into the field and our partners and customers.
Yeah, so Christian is really just the perfect person to talk about these two together. Thank you for being with us today, Christian. Before I hand off to you and we really laser focus on manufacturing, just a quick reminder for folks of what is OpenAI. OpenAI is a research lab, and Microsoft has invested heavily in it. It is a team of researchers and engineers that's dedicated to advancing artificial intelligence in a way that it benefits humanity as a whole. Their mission aligns quite well with Microsoft missions of empowering every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. They do research across various fields of AI, which include things like natural language processing. They also do computer vision, so algorithms that can recognize and understand visual data like images or videos. They do robotics. Think of intelligent robotic systems that can learn from human demonstrations and perform complex tasks in the real world. And they also do reinforcement learning. That's a form of machine learning that involves training agents to make decisions. You create intelligent systems that can learn from experience based on rewards and punishments. Now, what is Azure OpenAI? It is a combination of the two technologies, Microsoft Azure and OpenAI, with the objective of building enterprise-grade applications. Based on the partnership with OpenAI, Microsoft is delivering on three main goals. The first one is to utilize Azure's infrastructure, including security as well as compliance and regional availability, to help our partners and customers deploy enterprise-grade applications. The second one is to deploy OpenAI model capabilities across the Microsoft product stack, not just Azure AI products, but across our stack. And then the third one is to use Azure to power all of OpenAI's workloads. In the slide, you might see some examples of the modules that OpenAI offers. You probably have seen ChatGPT, and it says coming soon, but it's already here, so we haven't updated the slide, so just ignore that piece. Just know that when you leverage Azure OpenAI, you can then deploy these modules into your Azure subscription. You can leverage a wide range of pre-trained AI models. You can use tools for fine-tuning those models, APIs to interact with the models. And then again, because you're deploying onto Azure, you get the scalability, reliability, security, and compliance from the Azure cloud. If you want to know more, click on that video down on the description. Let's switch up, and now I'm going to hand it over to you, Christian. Talk to me about OpenAI in manufacturing and mobility specifically.
Thank you, Sana. The good news is this is our lingua franca for all things industry. We canonize, so to speak, these things called the industry priority scenarios. They've been living in the industry side of Microsoft for several years now. This becomes the top-down model for how we engage and message to our customers that actually eventually work its way into the plays and the technology and the use cases, which we'll go over. Starting with left to right, you have transforming workforce. This is everything that essentially impacting the frontline worker, right? Or even those are working on the top floor. So shop floor to top floor worker tools. This could be collaboration tools such as Teams, or could this be project management or work item tracking solutions driven by even ERP systems. Engaging customers in new ways. This is about customer facing solutions. This could be always on services like bots, which plays a role here in OpenAI, or just simple customer-facing solutions that leverage Microsoft technology to work with their customers, in this case, industrial customers. Building agile factories is really somewhat of a catch-all for all things factory related. That could be anything from the top floor operational visibility to overall production operations, CapEx and OpEx, to get a little bit closer to the line itself, right? Smart factories and such. Resilient supply chains is pretty self-explanatory. This is everything from demand forecasting, which we'll cover, to supply chain execution, and of course, the insights that help drive smarter supply chain decisions. Unlock innovation, another broad topic. This is usually involving incubation, simulations, what if scenarios, technology that usually involves things like high performance computing that will generate new services or even help construct a digital thread from the edge to the top floor.
Thank you. And these are not necessarily just the OpenAI scenarios, right? These are just, in general, the areas that the industry is focusing on.
Yeah, exactly. It's really this starting point for all conversations I have. Everything kind of flows top down from these IPSs to then capabilities within each IPS, then eventually to the technology that maps to those capabilities. So in the area of manufacturing mobility, some of the kind of broader areas that the conversation of OpenAI usually starts with these things like generative systems. So you may have heard the term generative AI, and that means that essentially the creation of content. This could be code, this could be content that sits on a website, this could be an email, or just a text that you're using to to communicate to the operational side of the house. And then, of course, identifying things like people and pictures and words, helping transcribe speech or even handwriting. This is about getting to the point and allowing OpenAI to help you identify things much, much faster. Becoming an assistant, and Copilot is one of those examples they've heard from Microsoft. And then the overall customer scenarios, both general and more specific to manufacturing, are some of these elements. We'll go through demand forecasting, automated quality inspection. These are very specific to manufacturing. And then overall on the right there, you have general sentiment analysis. This gets into speech, generating reports. These are cross-cutting, cross-industry type of more general OpenAI use cases.
I really like this slide. We've done this already with FSI, this call, and with retail and consumer goods. And we didn't have something like this. It does, as you said, calls out scenarios that go across all industries. They might look a little bit different, but they're just going to be common opportunities across the board. We might steal this slide, Christian, for our next couple of videos.
Excellent. So one of the first use cases, and these use cases are in no particular order, but one very popular use case is demand forecasting. Speaking of the IPS of a resilient supply chain, this is front and center with supply chain management. We have actually some partners such as OpenAI that make this a core part of their product. So AI has been a kind of a prevailing technology used for demand forecasting, and that frankly is even gotten better with the technologies around OpenAI. So now instead of just having AI be predictive with say supply chain or maybe supply chain constraints, you now have the ability to naturally communicate and interact with those AI systems using natural language, right? Because there's always challenges around disconnected processes. These things are siloed text and unstructured data, come from different places that impact the production of a factory line and eventually will impact the ability of having the need to have specific parts be there so that you don't impact the overall production of the factory. And being able to query those different systems and using natural language to ask those questions like, hey, what do I need to buy? How is this going to impact production flow is going to make things much, much simpler and easier for these both the partners to incorporate that technology, but ultimately their customers to build better products and process those products such as hydrogen or even oil and gas. The next major category is automated quality inspection. And this is frankly one of my favorite. This is where OpenAI really shines because again, these silos of data live everywhere on the factory floor. They live from on the edge They live on these historians for process manufacturing. They may sit in an ERP system or a manufacturing execution system or MES, right? There's all these silos, right? And there's technologies and even standards that cross all of these areas. And being able to make sense of it all and let alone automate all of it is incredibly important because this ultimately is going to impact the manufacturing business, right? Being able to build, obviously produce, buy, and sell these products by in the case of supply chain and having demand forecasting drive that, but ultimately run the business, right? So production operations is very important to have something like more automation, taking information from the edge to the potential the historian and even the other systems like MES and ERP, and asking questions using natural language to inspect, to create structure from unstructure, and actually run the business and be more profitable on the top floor. Predictive maintenance is the usual suspect. This is usually anywhere from determining when a piece of equipment is going to fail, whether a piece of equipment in the sustainability realm is generating too much energy and having wasteful energy, right? And mitigating those elements, right? So with OpenAI, you have obviously a way to minimize downtime. It's always a goal for predictive maintenance is to minimize that downtime. And the way to do that is just insight, right? So the way to automate that insight, get that insight, because that, again, that data is siloed everywhere. Grabbing that data safe from a historian and then determining anomalies that will lead to equipment failure is very, very important. And some of these systems are very brittle, and having the ability to be flexible and automated, allowing to use improved knowledge mining, brought to you really almost out of the box with these large language models is incredibly important and very, very impactful. So it's really taking predictive maintenance from a less brittle environment to a more fluid environment, taking advantage of data without having to require data scientists to build these models over and over again for different types of equipment.
I think this is a great example that I hope helps people understand the possibilities with OpenAI outside of the confinements of the chatbot and natural language. A lot of people, when they think OpenAI, they're only thinking of that. They're thinking ChatGPT. And I think this one is a good example around optimizing operations. And I really like that you included that improvement of the knowledge mining.
How do you manage the maintenance as well, right? We have partners that are actually working and building team solutions so that when a red alert or some kind of alert is firing from an anomaly, you could act upon it. And orchestrating and collaborating even in teams gets heightened, and using ChatGPT, for example, to have automated insights so that you can communicate to your frontline workers the issues at hand. And so it's just a much more convenient way to mitigate these issues. Remote asset monitoring is really a natural extension of the whole predictive maintenance world, right? So being able to remotely monitor, and this is the the asset performance management area, right? So having the information from process manufacturing is a great example for, say, manufacturing or the process of running green or blue hydrogen across a pipe and making sure that is flowing during production time. And so being able to monitor that information, being able to grab the unstructured data, and there's tons of it, and then using natural language to query from those sources, and then having more advanced process engineers or field engineers be able to get to that data very, very quickly and garner insights, even all within their data science tools. Those data engineering tools are very purposely built. And this kind of federates some of that data so they don't have to go to the source. They can do this in a remote fashion, and they could do it right from the existing tools by augmenting it with OpenAI. So they can actually see the insights from the engineering tools they use day to day without having to, say, talk to an engineer about specific asset issues. And finally, this is a general purpose use case. This applies to any product that has a support center, which is frankly almost every single product. So the use case doesn't vary too much from this. In the manufacturing world, you have CPQ. These are price to quote for, say, large ticket items. It could be a water tank to cool some type of complex manufacturing process, right? The contact center is still the same, though. You need to be able to automate it. You need to be able to improve communication, go away from just the simple Q&A deterministic bot, taking advantage of the large language models for customers to interact in a more natural fashion, right? Without having to rebuild these bots when the scenario changes. So it really opens up and provides true flexibility so that you keep people off the phone and making your services always available online. And that could be also responsive, automated responsive, taking transcripts instead of taking speech to text and making sense of observations of what experience the customer is having in an automated way, which just obviously saves a ton of time. And then content generation, codecs and Sada mentioned the codecs as being one of the models for code generation, and that's actually been live for a while now in GitHub, but it also applies to content generation. This could be proposals that are automatically generated. This could be self-service sites that are tailored or personalized for manufacturing customers. This is any type of content generation really that can take advantage of OpenAI's models to generate that content, both in an automated way or impromptu ad hoc ways that saves content developers a ton of time. This could be copyright, this could be marketing, this could be, of course, software developers to generate automatically the content they need without, say, sending it to IT. Anytime you could avoid a round trip to IT to generate some of this content is going to save the manufacturing, especially manufacturing, who's always looking for low code, no code platforms. Frontline workers aren't developers. So anytime you put the power of content generation at the frontline worker level, you're going to save a ton of cost at the factory level.
Thank you, Christian. That was very helpful. For everyone out there, if this was what you needed to get that light bulb going, and now you have an idea on how OpenAI might apply to your business in the manufacturing mobility side, I highly recommend you reach out to your Microsoft accountant if you have one to talk about it further. If you would like to learn more about OpenAI, there's some resources on the slide for you. Or if you haven't yet requested access to the service, please do so. The best learning is hands-on learning. Again, Christian, thank you so much for going over the scenarios with us. Anything you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, just that we've been talking about AI being the next industrial revolution, and we're here, we're witnessing it. It couldn't be more powerful and impactful for companies and consumers. So pretty exciting time.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Again, thanks everyone. If you would like to see more of these, subscribe to the channel below. And again, there will be some links to other videos that we've done to the OpenAI in Industry series down below as well.